But let's get to the main question here, and that's about the Star of David, right? The symbol, of course, that is on the six-pointed star that we know is on the flag of Israel and is used actually in many cultures. And it's also known as a hexagram. And this passage in Amos chapter 5. So, of course, Thursday Night Theology, the first thing we're going to do is get into scripture and see what it says about this in the book of Amos. So let's go. Okay, so this is when, to set the stage, this is when the prophet is rebuking the northern kingdom of Israel for idolatry, right? What King David was so great at avoiding, they were falling into idolatry, worshiping the gods of the ancient world. And in this rebuke, this is what God is saying through the prophet: have you offered unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel? But you have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and Chion, your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves. You notice these are things they're fashioning. They're making these idols. There's, statues. And it says, therefore I will cause you to go into captivity beyond Damascus, saith the Lord, whose name is the God of hosts. And isn't it interesting that Yahweh uses the title God of hosts there? Because, of course, the host of heaven is a reference to the angelic realm. So what is this star, right? When he talks about Chiun and Moloch. Of course, Moloch is another name for the god Baal, but we're going to look at this star and look at another reference to it. And so, first of all, here's the prohibition that we see that God clearly gave. And so this is really important because God often, the language of stars and angels is often used interchangeably in scripture. We think of Revelation chapter 12, where the apostle John has this image, sees this vision of the dragon, the devil, dragging, says, a third of the stars with him down to earth when Satan is finally evicted from heaven, which is a future event during, the Great Tribulation. But those stars are angels. And so given that context, we're going to see another example of that here. And so this is Deuteronomy 4:19. And this again is God giving the law to the Israelites and warning them against worshiping the fallen angels. And it says, unless thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven. So there's the term. It's equating this as the host of heaven. Shouldest be driven to worship them and serve them, right? We're talking about beings, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. So not only is God equating them with the stars, he's also getting into what the divine counsel here, right? This is divine counsel territory where God is explaining here that he has divided the nation, the angels, and assigned them to the nations of the earth. And so, and of course, God shows Israel as his own nation. Of course, this is the late, great Dr. Michael Heiser's groundbreaking research on the divine counsel. He really was the first to really bring this out, that this is a passage that God at the Tower of Babel basically gave over the Gentile nations to the fallen angels and kept Israel. It says that Israel is God's portion. He was going to build his own nation from one man, Abraham, and that's how he would save the world. And so we see just further confirmation of this. Look at this passage. This is really interesting because I love this because this is the one that's mentioned often. Let's take another look at this passage. This is Deuteronomy 29. And look what we read here. This is from the Septuagint, and this is verses 23 to 25. And it says, and this is again is a rebuke. God saying that if Israel falls into sin, all the nations will say, why has the Lord done this to the land? I mean, in other words, why is he judging his people? What is this great fierceness of anger? And men shall say, because they forsook the covenant of the Lord God of their fathers, the things which he appointed to their fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. And they went and served other gods, right? Other gods. Now we're talking about the fallen angelic realm, which they knew not, neither did he, meaning Yahweh, assign them to them. So this passage is again confirming that the angels, there's an order of angels who are assigned to the nations of the world. And I believe Israel's angel is Michael, right? We're told in the book of Daniel, Daniel's told explicitly, he says, Michael, your prince, the prince of Israel, of course, is a righteous archangel. But all the other nations of the world had angels assigned to them, and the fallen angels. And this is, of course, a part of the whole divine council theology that Michael Heiser's brought out. But the point here, getting back to the Star of David, is we see this connection between stars and the fallen angels and false gods, the idols. And so this is what, so when we think about the Star of David, we have to again question, where did that come from? Because there is no Star of David in Scripture, right? So what is the significance of this hexagram and where does it come from? Well, we're going to look into that. And so, but first I want to make sure I give the explanation of the Star of David as it's commonly understood with respect to the Israeli flag. And this is from Britannica.com. I just put the whole definition in here. I won't read the whole definition, but it says this symbol, the Star of David, which historically was not limited to use by Jews. Notice it did not originate with the nation of Israel. It originated in antiquity when side by side with the five-pointed star, it served as a magical sign or as a decoration. The term Magen David, which in Jewish liturgy signifies God as the shield of David, and Magen David just means shield of David, gained currency among medieval Jewish mystics who attached magical powers to King David's shield, just as earlier non-Jewish magical traditions had, and referred to the five-pointed star as the seal of Solomon. Then it goes on to talk about Kabbalists popularized the use of it as well as a protection against evil spirits. And it closes by saying that there is no biblical authority for it. So even the secular Encyclopedia Britannica understands that it's not in the Bible. At no point was there ever a Star of David symbol or given to the nation of Israel or told to be put on a flag. But we see that didn't even originate with Israel. And when it was used in basically medieval times, it was for magic, right? It was more connected to the Kabbalah and to magic, which of course in the scripture is seeking the supernatural realm outside of Yahweh. So not a great origin. And it gets even deeper. And so, because we see it's a very revered and very powerful symbol when you look into the occult and to Freemasonry and spiritualism, we see that it really has great significance to those practitioners. And so we're going to look here. And this is just from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. And it says, the double triangle of Solomon is the sign of the macrocosmos, which is the great world. It has many meanings in the lesser and greater mysteries. It is the three who bear record in heaven and the three who give testimony on earth. It is the sign of the eternal creator, the grand architect, who of course is God to the Freemasons. It is that also of the triune man, perfect in the archetyped world as a prototypical image in the divine mind. So what is this saying? It's really saying that it's a key, right? Freemasonry is all about ascending to levels of godhood, right? That's basically what it's saying. That's the keys is somehow unlocking basically divine power. And again, this whole idea of trying to reach godhood outside of God, outside of actually worshiping and believing in Yahweh. And isn't it amazing how that kind of follows with our first question, right? What gave David supernatural power was absolute loyalty to God and God alone. And here we see the consequences of not doing that. It leads you down a very dark path. And so this is really a very powerful occult symbol, and we'll look at another example here. And so this is from a New Age site. I didn't cite it on purpose, but I can assure you it's from a New Age website. And we see here the flag, obviously, of Israel, and then that engraving you see is over the entrance to a Freemasonic lodge, and it says from the website, there's a lot of symbolism packed into that explanation. The macro prosopos and micro prosopos translate to the creator of the greater world and creator of the little world. The symbol is also frequently equated to the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. That is to say, things that happen in the spiritual realm in the microcosm reflect throughout the physical realm and the microcosm or macrocosm. And so where's this all coming from, right? This as above, so below, this symbolism. A lot of this came from that. And that drawing I showed originally here, I'll show it again real quickly. Here. This is a colored version of the original drawing of by Eliphas Levi, who was a Luciferian occultist, a revered occultist and Luciferian. And he made this symbol and to symbolize all these things, acquiring the divine mind. accessing the divine realm, right? It goes right back to the Garden of Eden, right? The devil telling Eve that if you eat of the fruit, ye shall be as gods. Your eyes shall be open, achieving this knowledge, right? Knowing good and evil. And so, again, very disturbing history. And so I'm not a proponent, and let's not just call out Israel, right? Let's not forget, right? We have stars. There are 50 stars in the American flag, but isn't it interesting how often we use stars as symbolism for countries, for nations, for things that are special, even celebrities? We call them stars. Why is that, right? What is inspiring even that idea, right? I think it all goes back to this idea of what God told us not to do, not to worship the stars, not to look to them, not to bow down before them. And so I think ultimately, I think that the origin of it is not biblical. So I think it's, to answer the question, I don't think it's biblical. I don't know if it's actually the Star of Remphan or Chiun in the New Testament. In Acts 7, Stephen calls it Remphan, which is another name for Saturn in ancient times. So, but however, it doesn't have, its origins are definitely in the occult and other religions. Even Hinduism has used the pentagram for the hexagram for thousands of years. And just in case you didn't think people just in popular society are aware of this, I'm going to show one last image here. Again, this is the original drawing by Eliphas Levi, again, who was an open Luciferian. And here's his drawing, and look to the right. This is an ad. And for those who don't know, that is the pop singer there, Brittney Spears. And it's an ad for her perfume. And notice the similarity, right? The crossing of the black and white, the opposite colors, as above, so below, the fusion of opposites. And what does this really come back to? I believe it comes back to Genesis 6, sons of God, daughters of men, right? The sons of God coming from heaven to the daughters of men and creating the Superman, the Ubermensch, as the Third Reich called it, the Nephilim and the hybrid. And so again, that's an ad. And I'm sure 99% of the people who saw that had no idea what they were even referencing. And maybe Brittney Spears wasn't even aware herself, but it's there in that ad. So believe me, it's out there. So this is why, what does Ephesians tell us in the book, in chapter 5, right? That we should have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but reprove them, expose them. So thank you for this question, because it gave a chance just to expose the history behind the hexagram. And I definitely wouldn't recommend putting it over your door in a circle with a snake around it. So that is my question. I answered the question number 2. And again, I think we're going to keep it rolling with a little live Q&A. And so let's see if we can get 1 or 2 questions going for a live answer. This is a great question. Will AI be part of the Nephilim? Well, I do believe AI will be part of the Great Tribulation. And how is that, right? I think the easiest example when we're talking about artificial intelligence, that to me is like absolutely mind-blowing, is when we look at the image of the beast. Now, of course, in Revelation 13, we're told about the Antichrist, who's going to rule over the world, be received as the Messiah of the world for 3.5 years, like literally ruling in a global government. But he also will have a global religion, right? You will have to worship the Antichrist or die, right? Under penalty of death. But the interesting thing is that the Antichrist doesn't receive that worship directly. The false prophet, who is basically kind of his right-hand man / religious / prime minister, whatever you want, his chief disciple, essentially, it says he causes the people of the world who follow him, who follow the Antichrist, to create an image, right? And this all, again, is what I call quantum repetition. In the final Nephilim, I go into detail about how the Bible repeats events. And you think back to Moses and Aaron and the golden calf, how Aaron caused the people to give all their gold and make an idol. This is exactly to be worshipped. This is exactly what the false prophet's going to do in the Great Tribulation. So they make this image of the beast that they set up in the temple, which I believe is going to be the ultimate abomination of desolation. And why does they need this image to be worshipped? And I believe that's because the Antichrist is not omnipotent. He's not omnipotent. He's not all powerful. He's not all knowing. And he's not omnipresent. He has to go wage wars. He has to lead his government. So he sets up this image to receive his worship every day from all of his followers. And so, but the interesting thing about the image, it says it's an image, it's created, but it says it's given life. It's literally going to be alive. And so that, to me, that is the culmination of artificial intelligence, right? Everything we're seeing now is just a preview. I know there was a story last year about how a Google engineer said that they actually had an AI program that kind of self-actualized, and they had to shut it off because it was actually becoming fully autonomous. This is that times 1,000, because it says not only is it going to be alive, it's going to literally know who is worshiping it and who is not. Think about that, right? I'm actually going to do an episode on that for a regular video. So I should also mention that I'm restarting my podcast. So I'll get into that after our next break. But I'm going to do something about artificial intelligence and where I think this is all going. Like when we look at things like Neuralink, but it's going to know whether or not you're worshiping it for everybody on the earth. Now, how can that be? That's powerful AI. So that's where I see it all coming together. So great question. Let's see if we have time for one more. We're going to go to a break. Okay, Steve Flanders. All right, let's see. It says, hi, Ryan. When God divided the world at the Babel judgment, did he place the regions under members of his divine council, or did he give the people over to the false gods they wished to serve? Were the principalities already fallen, or did they rebel sometime after being put in authority over the regions of the earth? So yeah, so great series of questions. So I'll try and take it out all, to like address all of that in one answer. And so I think these angels were already fallen. It is possible they weren't, but I think they were, because I think God at that point knew he was drawing his line in the sand, right? And intentionally, because think about the context. The context was the world had just tried to achieve a one world government and one world religion at the Tower of Babel. Think about that. It says that the entire world was gathered to do this construction project. And I believe it wasn't just to build a tower that was high, because it says that they could reach heaven, right? They wanted to actually usurp God. I think they were trying to open the veil and bring back the fallen angels of Genesis 6, right? This is centuries after the flood. These are the generations who now hear the rumors from Noah's descendants of the Nephilim and everything that took place in the days of Noah. And so I think that was I think we underestimate how much of an offense that was to God, right? Think about that. God literally came down from heaven, which doesn't happen that often in scripture, that God comes down from heaven to punish anybody. But he did at Babel. And so I think God had, and then of course he confused them, right? He created the language to intentionally divide them. So I think when he was assigning those angels, they were already evil, because the people themselves that they were going to govern were already evil. And so, so that's my thought on that. And so I think it was much more, it was a combination of God is saying, I'm going to turn over, right? Right. God will always give you what you want, right? It's like the Israelites, and they said, give us a king so we can be like the other nations. God's like, okay. Samuel warned them and said, look, he's going to be horrible to you. He's going to oppress you. He's going to take your children. They said, we don't care. Nevertheless, give us that king. So God will give you what you want. And if you want to keep rebelling and have a false God over you, that's what you receive. So I think that's what happened after the Tower. Hi, it's Ryan Pitterson. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt of Thursday Night Theology. And if you want the full episode, you can click the video on the screen or find the link in the description of this video. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you can never miss out on any of my newest episodes, especially when I go live. And by the way, if you want to have one of your questions answered live on Thursday Night Theology, put your questions in the comment section of this video. So I get all my questions from my shows from the comment sections from all of you who are watching and enjoying the show. So put yours in and maybe it'll be on my next episode. So thank you again for watching. God bless, and I'll see you next Thursday.